So we have our first panel discussion of the day. I'm really excited to invite folks up to the stage. We have three wonderful humans that are going to be talking to us today. And this panel is about being a psilocybin facilitator. And we're going to be focusing mostly on the why here, and really looking at why become a psilocybin facilitator. And these three wonderful people, who I will tell you their names in a moment, and they're going to introduce themselves more, have a really diverse set of backgrounds. Where they come from, their lineages, and then how they embody the medicine is quite different between the three of them. So what I want to really encourage you to listen for is that difference, the way that they represent themselves, the way they have relationship with the medicine, with their practice, with the way they work, and how it can be different and be very grounded and still rooted in these practices that have been around since time immemorial. So I am very excited to introduce you, the three people that we have here. This is Claudia Cuentas, who is the Cultural Director at Alma Institute. We have Tal Sharabi, who is a licensed professional counselor and works with Intertrek. And we have Henry Fields, who is a licensed psilocybin facilitator and also works for Intertrek. So first up on the mic is Claudia, and please give her your attention.
Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to see you. Good morning. I appreciate so much Emma saying, did you shake a little bit? Because it's a long day and a long weekend, and I encourage you to be taking care of your bodies and your breath as we go along today. So, my name is Claudia Cuentas, and I'm here to talk with you about my experience as a facilitator. I am from Peru. I am an artist, an independent researcher, an educator, a student of my traditional and indigenous ways of healing and being, and a therapist. I come from a strong lineage of Aymara people, and I'm also a mixed race of Aymara, Quechua, Spaniard, and Portuguese. I'm passionate about the multiple ways of healing trauma and the decolonization of health. I'm trained in somatic experiencing, drama therapy, expressive art therapy, and hold an MA in counseling psychology. I have completed the MDMA-assisted psychotherapy training programs through MAPS, and I'm trained in the use of ketamine for trauma recovery through Polaris Insight Center. I'm also a certified psilocybin facilitator as of a few months ago. Currently, I am the cultural director of Alma Institute, a psilocybin facilitator training program in Portland. My focus is on the intersectionality of generational and ancestral trauma, plant medicine science, eco-informed therapy, and somatic nervous system healing and indigenous knowledge. I am also a recording musician and an artist. I was fortunate to be born into a very artistic, creative family, committed to equity and justice. I also was taken under my indigenous Peruvian and Ecuadorian teachers about 20 years ago. These have guided my path and my walk, especially being so far away from my homeland. I have been on Turtle Island, the United States, since I was 18 years old, and it is an honor to be here as a guest. My father and grandfather were incarcerated by the military governments of the 40s and 60s in Peru for fighting against injustices and for devoting their lives to the indigenous movement and the workers' rights movement. I grew up in Lima in the time of terrorism, witnessing family members and community members disappear by terrorists and the military alike. My family, history, and country of origin taught me that we have social responsibility wherever we are, and upon reflecting, I realized that I have entered the psychedelic movement from a harm reduction perspective and vision. So what has inspired in my walk to do this has been coming from a harm reduction place. How could we make sure we do this the best possible way together? Over the last 25 years in this country, I have observed, especially as a therapist and educator, the disparities and inequalities in the health system, and how this lack of accessibility has impacted children, youth, adults, and elders alike. So some of my questions in relationship to this movement, and as an educator and facilitator in it, have been, if we are forming a new movement and we get to decide how and what it looks like, could we educate others about the indigenous roots and origins of Los Niños Santos? Could we ensure many people from different backgrounds and from different cosmologies get proper training to facilitate these sessions so they can lead sessions to their people and their communities, to and for their people and their communities? Could we then encourage in the movement ways to embody true reciprocity, to base the movement in relationships and care for one another and from community to community, to not just tokenize or dissect the medicines, but understand the medicine as a whole in its own context? Because of my background and where I come from, my work with Psilocybin, Los Niñitos Santos, first fits within a bigger frame and cosmology for my people in South America. I do believe having a well-developed frame of work and cosmology will potentiate the work of facilitators across the state. Our cosmologies do not have to be the same, but some basic understanding of origin and roots must be present. In our traditional ways, the concept of Aini, or sacred reciprocity, is what makes the world go round and round. Aini is the acknowledgement and understanding that we are part of a symbiotic relationship with everything and everyone around us, in the microcosmos and the macrocosmos, and is this constant relationship of giving and receiving in balance that ensures life's preservation and continuation. As I am the cultural director of Alma Institute, I am happy to feel that we have put together a program that stands for these values and visions. It is an honor to be now both a facilitator and an educator, inviting students all over to wonder, what is their frame of reference? What are their values? What is holding them behind their work? Because one of the things that I can see the most is that the reason I can do this work and the reason I feel inspired to do it is because I have so much support behind me. The cosmology, a cosmovision, a culture, ancestors, teachers, family. So when you see me, but there is so much behind supporting this self. So the encouragement and the invitation is, will you be curious and have a constant inquiry of what is the cosmology and the frame that holds you in place? What is the offering and where are the roots? If anything, the inspiration of this work is that we make it wholesome, which means, in my vision, driving a golden thread between the roots, the origin, and what we hope to do today. But it is connected, not just dissected, not just separate, but it somehow has coherence when we feel it. One of the other things I do tell my students, and I do feel as a practitioner, is our bones are the ones holding the space. We can say many things, we can do many things, but we are not pretending to ask people to mimic or imagine they know things they don't yet, or take something out of context and repeat it just as an action. We're inviting people to have coherence in the way they see, which means, can we acknowledge that if we take a step back, we do belong to a bigger fabric of knowledge from our ancestry, from our families, from our roots, and also the medicine belongs to a bigger fabric of knowledge itself. If we meet that and know that and are studious of that and are studious of our own, we can become the best possible facilitators we can be. So it is an honor to be part of this movement. I'm out of time now. Wonderful to see you here. I hope you enjoy the conference, and I invite you to pay attention to our dear guest, Tal, now. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Claudia. So this is my team in Inner Track. I'm one of the lead educators. And we are about to graduate our second cohort this month. Very excited. I saw many of you in the audience. So I want to introduce myself. This is an art by Autumn Sky. Many of you know that. And to me, the movement and what we're doing here relates to that, and it relates to what you said. You talked about a thread. And I want to invite us to think about the place that each of us play in what we're doing, And I want to offer you mine. This is my contribution and the thread that I follow. So my name is Tal Sharabi. I'm a licensed professional counselor. And I specialize in working somatically with clients that experience complex trauma. And I also focus on integration of non-ordinary states of consciousness. So I graduated from CIS with a certificate in psychedelic therapy and research, and completed parts A and D of the MAPS training for MDMA therapy. I'm also in ongoing supervision and consultation with Polaris Insight Center as well for ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. And I worked in retreats in Jamaica, holding space as a lead therapist, and also provide ketamine-assisted psychotherapy here in Oregon. So I want to speak about my experience as a lead educator and come from that. And of course, what I'm going to say is coming from my social location, my life experience, and also from my background. What brought me to the field of psychedelics is my fascination with the human psyche. I've basically been a psychonaut since the age of 5, as long as I can remember. And as an educator, and from the very first moment that I started to work in this field or to engage in the psychedelic field, one of the things that I feel like I protect and bring forward is the mystery. The mystery can be elusive, and yet it holds us all. Connecting to this mystery or the mystery evokes so much richness in our life. And I would like to invite that to be present in what we're doing. So I would like to share with you a few thoughts. And we're asking the question, who qualifies to do this work? And the OHA created a lot of different guidelines that help us know what kind of knowledge we need to acquire in order to become a facilitator. I want to point out that we're emphasizing knowledge here. We're emphasizing things that we need to know. And I think that we're missing a couple of really important things. One of them is experience. Experience of people that came before us, and our own experience. And the other thing that I feel like we're missing is the fact that we are the instrument, and this is an invitation to dedicate your life for transformational work. So I want to talk about those things. So becoming a facilitator is a process of becoming, emphasizing becoming. And I want to speak about, I want to invite you, if you're considering to become a facilitator or already a facilitator, to consider dedicate your life to purpose, to do your own work and to help others do their own work as well. And by that, you're engaging with the collective too. Dr. Rachel Harris, in her book Swimming in the Sacred, interviews 20 elders from the underground work. And they have 20 years or so of experience. And the common denominator of all of those people is that they have about 6 years or more of mentorship, where they actually participated in their own work and watched others before they actually engaged in holding space. So there is a merit in being watching other people that have experience, but also having our own experience with the medicine. I want to encourage us to have and develop a relationship with the mushrooms, and know what non-ordinary state means, and know to navigate that. For that, we need to have our own experience. As facilitators, we are the instrument of our own work. And in order to do that kind of work, we need to work on our shadow. And by shadow, it means all the aspects of the unconscious aspects of ourselves that are affecting the way we carry ourselves in the world and the way we do our job and our work. So I want to encourage us to do that work on the personal level, but also in community, because this is an invitation to hold each other accountable. So in closing, I would like to share with you 3 aspects of this work of holding space that I care about. These are my 3 favorite words for holding space in psychedelics. And these words are presence, attunement, and attending to the unseen field. And I want to explain them. And the reason I chose those 3 words is because if you're going to follow them and really meditate on what they mean for you and practice them, they're going to put you in the path of personal growth work and embodiment of what we're doing. So, presence. Through the practice of presence, we can still ourselves enough to be aware of all that is presenting itself. Presence is intentional practice, and this is where our knowledge, all the knowledge that we learned, can come into present moment awareness. So we encapsulate that, and we're being with someone with undivided attention. Attunement is the embodiment practice. Is when our nervous system feeling and becoming aware of another's nervous system. And maybe even the collective nervous system, as Thomas Hubel likes to say. So in attunement, we're really becoming really well tuned with the practice. I want to explain the last word, and I'm running out of time, so I'm going to borrow a few seconds to explain what does it mean to attend to the unseen field. And the field is the field is where we lean into the mystery. Is when we step back. When we talk about non-directive approach, that's when we step back and we let the wisdom of the mushrooms come through, but also the client's innate intelligence and their healing intelligence. So by giving that space and letting that things unfold, there is some kind of mystery that works through in the process. And I want to invite you to really fine-tune into what does it mean to do that. That is all the time I have. Thank you so much.
Great job. My name is Henry Fields, and I'm a licensed psilocybin facilitator. I did my training at Intertrek, and I'm now hired at Intertrek Services as well as Vital Reset. The first thing that I'd like to do is just take a moment to express how grateful I am that I was asked to speak here, and what a strong confirmation that is for me that I am truly on my path. About 5 years ago, I sunk into a very deep depression, and it went from 1 day a week not getting out of bed to 2 or 3, and I was researching SSRIs and looking for help, and an inner voice said, well, give microdosing a try. I was like, oh yeah, microdosing. And that very same day, I walked upstairs, and my roommate gave me a bag of mushrooms, and they were already crushed up and in capsules. So I needed the relief. I didn't research the Paul Stamets model or anything. I just started popping these capsules and walking in Mount Tabor. And, you know, in very short amount of time, I noticed a lift in my soul. But more importantly, the radio station on my internal navigating system was just turned up a little in volume, and I started to connect to my guides, which not only drew me out of the depression, but out of 30 years of being in the restaurant business and following those breadcrumbs to where I stand right now. So I thank you for witnessing that. My fascination with non-ordinary states of consciousness began when I was very young because I have narcolepsy. And when you have the superpower of being able to descend very rapidly into REM state, all sorts of crazy things happen with it. So quite regularly, I would experience sleep paralysis or floating out of my body, or sometimes being launched out of my body, having very vivid, often terrifying dreams, and being aware of all the denizens of the astral plane that seemed to hover around my bed. Now, as a very confused 12-year-old, there was a side of me that said, if I knew where I was supposed to be, if I grew up where I was supposed to be, meaning the tribe in Africa that I came from, someone would come and tell me that these were a gift and instruct me on how to use them. Mm-hmm. Now, because there was no such teacher, and because I was resisting being raised in a born-again Christian household, I ran towards esoteric wisdoms, towards mysticism, towards occultism, and towards LSD. Now, fun fact, I didn't get diagnosed with narcolepsy until I was 21 years old when the movie My Private Idaho came out. And the whole town collectively went, narcolepsy! You have narcolepsy! They're yelling out of car windows. And so I went to the sleep clinic and did the test, and that is what it was. Mostly because I started playing music, worshiped Jimi Hendrix, and was studying the mystery systems, took LSD in the 9th grade, and immediately became one of those, hey, it should be in the water, man, type of LSD guys. And I'm very proud of the fact that my very first inclinations of taking LSD was to organize be-ins and parties where I would set up places to paint, places to play music, and invite people from different cliques in my high school and give them all LSD. And just watch those walls come down and how art and music would rise in prevalence, and it was very powerful. But I was a microcosmic reflection of the summer of love and that value system that I deeply admired. But I realized that all I was doing was tearing down the walls of conformity that felt like they confined me, but I didn't really have anything to offer in return. And I rode that train into harder drugs and to alcohol. So in my late 20s, I had a pretty serious drug and alcohol habit. But one thing that was really good about that experience is because I walked with all walks of life during that experience, from your kind of highbrow champagne drinkers to really hard drugs in the street, it's really where I learned non-judgment and compassion and seeing the good in everybody regardless of the surrounding. And non-judgment and compassion is a foundational principle to what I bring to my facilitation style. In my early 30s, I leaned into 12 steps, into meditation and yoga to find my way into sobriety. And I read a book, A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And that book literally changed my life because the light bulbs went out with all the teachers that were around me that I wasn't quite getting. But then I started to have the crystallized internal experience of what it felt like to be in the present moment, to be connected to spirit, to experience stillness in the expansive state of being in the present moment, and begin to juxtapose that to the constriction of my ego, the monkey mind, the narrative holding those beliefs. I do believe as a psilocybin facilitator that you have to find that within yourself first and lean into that channel, and then that is what you are offering and reflecting back to your client. So that's how I found it during that time period. And then as I was coming out of the depression and leaving the restaurant business, I say leaving the restaurant business, but I got fired, and I never looked back. I felt like the universe did that for me. And I took that time, as I was following those breadcrumbs, to study to be a shamanic practitioner with Michelle Christensen at the Heart of Rose, and to study hypnosis, and to really just write about all of the wisdoms that I had gleaned from those teachers. And I offered it in a business called Inward Dive, where I was helping people connect to their intuition and reverse engineering the steps that I took out of that depression. And then eventually I started to prep people to go into plant medicine by teaching them about meditation and trance states without the medicine and how to craft a strong intention. And then I got hired by Sacred Heart Medicine Sanctuary, which was the first of its kind above ground psilocybin church in Vancouver. And I maybe did 3 or 4 weeks of sitting with psilocybin with people for maybe a year or so before I did the training at Intertrek. What I have learned from being the LSD wanting to just bring down the barriers to now that the mind, body, and soul, but the soul is leading the ship with expanding. And it knows what to do. So I kind of consider psilocybin facilitation like a soul doula. My job is to show up with compassion, presence, reflect that light to the person. I sing, so I bring music, which is sound vibration, into the room. And then also to be able to preempt when they need a glass of water or a pillow or holding the hand. And then the medicine and their own guiding system is going to work out the rest of the process. So I'm Henry Fields. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, so we are going to spend some time in conversation now. Our last couple minutes will be open to Q&A from the audience. But my first question for you all actually begins with a little bit of an invitation. I'd like to ask you all to take a moment and think about yourself many years ago, for all of you, when you had the first inclination that this is the work that you wanted to do. So see if you can connect to that younger self for a moment. And what I'm curious to hear you talk about is when you think about that person and then you think about yourself now, what did you have no clue was going to happen, or you were going to have to work through or greet along the way? What's the biggest surprise for that younger self when that younger self looks at you now? And I'm not going to pick who goes first, so just whoever wants to speak, go for it.
I can speak to that.
Yes, Henry.
I think how I initially looked at mystery systems and stepping into not necessarily this type of work, but this type of field where transformation is possible. In my younger years, I was much more about how my mind can control objective reality, and that was what was inspiring me, and along the way, it really became about service, and like Tal says, attunement, what's happening in the present moment, and the humility to allow that to happen. Two-way street as opposed to I have the will to be able to put something into objective reality.
That sounds like a pretty big shift from thinking you can control something to surrendering to the co-creation that's happening in the moment.
Well said.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
I guess that's a wonderful question because I'm still in the process of integrating. I mean, I come from a ceremonial background with teachers and I've been learning from for the last 17 plus years and really following ceremonial indigenous protocols from where I come from Peru and South America and Central America and also the North America. So I never thought I would be doing this, never. And I was actually reflecting because the work of ceremonies have happened in the South, in the Central America, within context of being held with that, with all those backgrounds that I was talking about. And now with Psilocybin and with Niñitos de Luz, the beautiful invitation is to hold space. And in our beliefs, with our traditions, our teachers talk about one medicine and another medicine, they're the same medicine. Medicine is one. And there are just different entry points on what medicine you use to enter in different ways, but you're getting to the same place. So there's just one medicine. The place that you get to is one, is the same. So now doing this here above ground with students and being able to share is incredible. And I used to say, oh, I will not be leading anything. Maybe when I'm 60, I'll do it. And it's happening now, and it's kind of happening by itself, and deeply grateful for the invitation of those doors opening in this way. So yeah, it's very surprising.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Tal, how about you?
Yeah. I like your question a lot, and the first thing that came up to my mind is how I can see a thread from that 5-year-old all the way to here that is not changed. And that is, makes me emotional and also makes me feel like very grateful that my first loyalty is not psychedelics, but actually human experience and human condition, and psychedelics is the means. So for me, medicine is medicine, and the medicine is our hearts, our presence, our connection, and psychedelics are beautiful, beautiful tools and instruments to work with. They have, some of them have the gifts of consciousness, some of them have the gift of nature, and they all carry some kind of wisdoms of the thread. What I had to do in all my years is to unlearn a lot of things. As a therapist, all the things that I thought I knew, I had to deconstruct it all completely. So I feel that being in this work, the gift and also the challenge is that you have to die and also to be reborn every moment with the presence, right? So that's also come up for me. And in facilitation, I feel like I'm always growing, like you said. So right now, my fascination and my passion is to work with people with complex trauma, but it can change tomorrow.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you all. So, kind of building off of that, each of you in your individual talks mentioned in different ways this idea of personal work, and that as we're working with clients, with participants, there's also, these are my words of what you said, but there's kind of like a requirement that we have to be working on ourselves in order to be in this work. I would love to hear from each of you how you hold that, and if you had words for people who are considering entering this path, the importance of personal work, what would you say to them about what to know when getting into this? I think, Claudia, let's start with you.
I think that is one of the most important pieces, because in some ways working with medicine and working with niñitos de luz, psilocybin nowadays is creating a space, emptying oneself and becoming a vessel so the medicine can come through and guide the process. So it's really coming from a deep reverence, and as you said, Henry, is the medicine doing the work? I'm just holding the space and keeping the space safe, having a well-rounded container so a person can expand and contract as they need to in their own healing process. So for me, it's being in nature, anything that allows me to increase my sensorial awareness. So turning all the input off and just being in nature, being with breath, being with playfulness as well, being with laughter, nourishing the body, the physiology of the body, resting, sleeping, deeply important, and having time to contemplate, having time to just continue cultivating presence in the in-between, between the visible and the invisible. Continue finding ways of what helps me be in that realm of the in-between, and putting energy and investing time on inhabiting that and embodying self in those realms more and more. Yeah.
It sounds like a constant practice.
Yeah. It's a constant learning.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yes.
Tal, do you want to answer next?
I love what you're saying about being in nature and playfulness. My first home is mindfulness. So I always go back to that, and I like to say to facilitators, know where your home is. Come back home every time. So as a journeyer and also as a facilitator, when things and the energies and everything gets a lot, then you can come back home. And to me, that is what I cultivated through years of mindfulness practice and different Buddhist practices. So that is what I feel like I come back to. And the practices that help me come back home and know what home is my own introspective work, finding time during the day for ritual, for mindfulness, and awareness in the moment of how do I walk on this earth and trying to walk a little bit more gently and a little bit more together.
Beautiful. Thank you. Henry?
I think I'll answer that question about saying when I know it's time for me to do the work as far as holding space as facilitator, and that's when my own thoughts are, palpably to me intruding onto the space. It's when I'm so stressed or so much is going on. And I usually, the biggest tool in my tool belt is yoga. Usually getting to a good hot yoga class makes me feel grounded and present again, and sleep. Those are the two tried and true ones for me.
Yeah, wonderful. Seems like you all have a really strong toolbox of things that you lean on, and it's a pretty consistent practice. It's not just a one and done. So my next question for you might be a little spicy. And, we know that we have these training programs. Claudia and I work at one of them. Y'all work at them. And many of them are not that long, 6 months, 7 months. From hearing each of you talk, it sounds like your experience expanded much longer than just a couple months in your training. So my question for you is, how do you know when you're ready to hold space one-on-one? What are your cues? And what are your cues that you're not ready? And whoever wants to go first can go first. Amira? Yeah.
Yeah. I want to offer a tool. Nervous system is a wonderful tool. It's we can come back home to what we talked about. And so know how you can hold space with your nervous system. So if you have your own stuff to work with, you're still healing, you're not quite regulated during the day, that would be an indication, not yet. Find a way to learn more practices around that. So that's one thing that I can think about, and I'll come back, I'll circle back if that's okay.
Yeah, great.
It makes me think about the importance of mentors and teachers, just because our nervous system, in some ways I can think back and go, oh, my nervous system was so dysregulated and I needed presence of different people showing me how to hold my nervous system within the space. And specifically thinking about when we are holding a space for somebody to do healing work, there's going to be some disorganization that happens before some organization happens again. And the bandwidth that we have to sit with this organization and be calm in our nervous systems is the key to how much we can support somebody. If somebody's getting really disorganized and expressive, and if I am panicking, then I won't be able to help them. So I guess mentoring teachers, seeing role models on how they did it, so then when times come, remembering that there is a place to be home while the process is happening, and leaning, as you said, towards trusting the mystery. But not just to trust the mystery, but actually to know that you can, because you've done it so many times, and you know that it always turns around. It always, healing does happen. Yeah.
Can I add
Please?
something?
Yeah.
How do you teach what we're talking about?
What do you think?
I was thinking about this week because if we teach it in a certain way, it has the risk of becoming a dogma. I wouldn't like to see that. How do you know you're ready? I feel humble to say to people, you're not ready, but at the same time, that's my job. So maybe what I'm thinking about is how we can hold it together. And we're coming with ideas. One of the ideas that you were talking about is mentorship, setting a set of steps in order to become more ready, to get more experience, to know the space. You would know when you're ready, hopefully. And the other part of it is community, having others to reflect to you your readiness, to have trusted people that can tell you the truth. Tal, let's practice on those things right now. You're not quite ready for that. And I know that recently I started to cultivate that community, and I'm very excited about that. I feel like I want to encourage all of us to start to create those community of practices with no dogma.
Systems of accountability.
Yes,
Together.
system of accountability. Love that. That's not top-down and not knowledge-based, but something that we can create from new.
Is it fair to say, from what you both are saying, that readiness is not a piece of paper, but is instead the reflection that we get from our teachers and our community and from our own internal system, and that it's based in being in community and honesty with ourselves and each other, and not something that a governmental body or a piece of paper can give us? Is that fair?
I love that.
Yes.
Okay. Henry?
I would agree with that, yes. As far as readiness, not ready, I do really feel that people are called to this type of work, and there'll be series of synchronicities that are leading someone into this path. As a practitioner or someone that's going to experience plant medicine, I do very much agree with what they said about regulating the nervous system. It makes me think about, I used to work at high-end busy restaurants, and we'd have to tell people, you're not ready to be on the floor. And it really was like, you're going to fall apart when things get crazy, right? And not only that, can you be non-distracted when things are going without effort and still focus and know what you're there to be doing and have that be your focus the entire time that you're there. So I think that being called into it and knowing that you can remain focused when you don't have anything to do, instead of wondering like, how can I inject my personality into the situation? Just know that you're holding space. And also when things get dicey, which they will, that you can remain calm, because that's when the client is leaning on you the most.
Yeah. That's such a skill. I know I've experienced that a lot in my own work, of being able to attune to that moment of when is it time to step back, when is it time to step forward. And like both of you said, that nervous system tending is a really important piece of that, and that we have to be able to track our own selves and track somebody else and a field at the same time, which is a muscle that takes a lot of time to grow.
Yeah.
Thank you all. So we have a very short amount of time. I'm going to look at these questions and pull one. Okay, we have a clear winner here. What was the most challenging experience that you have faced with a client that was under the influence, and how did you handle it? And I want to remind you, we have about a minute left, so we can't tell long stories, so like real short. And whoever has one, feel free to go.
I will quickly say that my first, most challenging was my first experience where the gentleman actually did leave. And it really sits with me because my intuition was telling me that he needs to be held or he wants to be cradled, and I was too insecure to do what my intuition was telling me, and as a result, I feel like he felt abandoned and was really struggling and did actually leave the administration session. So that was my most difficult, but it taught me a valuable lesson.
Yeah, thanks, Henry.
I feel like the hardest experience that can be is when the client doesn't feel safe and doesn't trust the space or you. It happened in different occasions in group setting. It didn't happen to me one-on-one, but when the client doesn't feel comfortable, it can lead to all different scenarios. So preparation is important, and there are different ways to do that in a way that helps the client remove the risk for paranoia. I think that can be a really difficult experience.
Yeah, preparation is really key in preventing these things.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tal. Claudia?
I will say an experience where a participant is going deep down into trauma and is starting to feel very, almost like frozen by the fear experience, and knowing how the medicine and the Niñitos de Luz are working, and just trusting the process, truly just giving more space, even though the impulse might be to rescue, just allowing that depth to continue until a certain moment where then it might be important to check in, but just just the in between again. The person is going really, really deep. It seems like almost they're energetically leaving the space, and you're wanting to keep them safe and want them to keep oriented, but also you do know that sometimes we do have to go to those steps to come back ourselves and activate autonomy and the work of the inner healing and inner guidance that everybody has.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I can hear what you were saying earlier in that, of that your nervous system as a facilitator impacts how deep someone else can go, that you can sit with that discomfort as someone else is going through that process. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, you three. Let's give them a hand.
Thank you.
Okay.